The clock struck 8:45 p.m. as Emma wiped down the last table of the evening. Her shift was almost over, and the small-town diner had become quieter, the usual hum of chatter now replaced by the soft buzz of the neon sign outside. She was exhausted, barely able to keep her eyes open, but the bills piled up back home. Rent was due. The bills for her mother's medical treatment were mounting. The stack of overdue notices in her apartment could have been mistaken for a small mountain. This job wasn't glamorous. It wasn't her dream, but it was all she had. Her waitress apron felt heavier than it ever had before, and her shoes ached. The low hum of a conversation behind her didn't catch her attention at first. After all, it was just another set of late-night customers, always the same group of tired workers or lonely souls looking for some company in the form of greasy food and hot coffee. But tonight, something felt different. The door opened, and in stepped a man Emma had never seen before. He was tall, his gait confident but not arrogant. His suit was worn, but well-tailored, with a tie that looked slightly out of place in a small-town diner. He was in his mid-50s, graying hair neatly combed back, his face sharp and calculating, yet there was something oddly familiar about him. He didn't sit down immediately. Instead, he scanned the room, looking around as if searching for something. Or someone. "Hi there," Emma greeted him with a smile, trying to keep her tone warm despite her fatigue. "Table for one," the man replied, his voice low but steady, almost as if he'd been practicing his words all day. "Preferably by the window." She gestured toward the table in the corner, and the man walked over, sitting down without a word. There was an odd sense of urgency in the way he carried himself, but Emma couldn't quite place it. She scribbled his order down on her notepad and approached with the usual pleasantries, though something in his expression made her hesitate. His eyes, despite their sharpness, seemed sad, distant, as if something weighed heavily on his mind. It wasn't unusual. People came here all the time with baggage they left at the door. But for some reason, this man's demeanor felt like it had an unspoken story behind it. Emma's curiosity tugged at her as she returned with his coffee. She watched the man for a few seconds from behind the counter, as he stared out the window, lost in thought. The streetlights outside cast long shadows across his face, making him look older than he probably was. His hands, though steady, trembled slightly as he wrapped his fingers around the mug. A few moments passed before he looked up, catching Emma's eye from across the room. "Is it always this quiet?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. "Yeah," Emma replied with a half-smile, leaning against the counter. "Not much happens around here at night. Mostly the regulars are folks passing through." "Passing through, huh?" The man's lips twitched as if he found something amusing, but the humor didn't quite reach his eyes. "Must be nice to just pass through life. To not have anything to tie you down." Emma hesitated. There was something off about the man. But she didn't have time to analyze him. There was a tip to earn and bills to pay. "I guess," she said, trying to keep the conversation light. "But you know, some of us have bigger problems to worry about than whether life feels like it's passing us by." The man's eyes softened, a flicker of recognition passing through them. He studied her for a moment, as if contemplating something deeply personal. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, the hairs on her neck standing on end. There was no way she could explain it, but for a brief moment, she felt like he could see right through her. Not just the tired waitress in a rundown diner, but everything she had been hiding, her struggles, her dreams that felt more distant every day. She shook the thought from her mind. He was just a customer, after all. A rich man, by the looks of his clothes and the way he carried himself. The last thing she needed was to be dragged into someone else's emotional crisis. "Maybe I'm just looking for something I can't find," he said softly, breaking her train of thought. "Like what?" Emma asked, unable to stop herself from being curious. The man paused, then smiled faintly, his eyes distant. "Sometimes, it's not about what you can find, but who you meet along the way." As Emma walked away to grab his order, she thought she saw him reach into his jacket pocket, as though to pull out something important. But she didn't dwell on it. After all, it was just another evening in the diner, right? Just another late-night shift. But what happened next would change everything. She returned to the table moments later with his food, setting it in front of him carefully. As she did, the man's eyes locked onto hers once again. There was a hint of something unspoken in his gaze, something intense that made her heart skip a beat. And then, without warning, he did something that made Emma's pulse race. He pulled out a business card from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. "Call me if you ever need anything," he said, his voice low but firm. "I'm in a position to help people who need it." She stared at the card, the weight of the gesture heavy on her chest. Little did Emma know, this was just the beginning of a story that would unfold in a way she never could have imagined. That simple interaction, an offer from a stranger, a moment of kindness, would be the catalyst for a series of events that would completely turn her life upside down. The man wasn't just any stranger, and Emma was about to find out just how deep the world of wealth, power, and hidden identities really went. Emma stood still for a moment, staring at the business card the man had slid across the table. It felt out of place in her hand, like something she had no right to touch. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what it might mean. She glanced at the man, his eyes still fixed on her with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of her thoughts. There was no arrogance in his gaze, no hidden agenda, just a quiet certainty that he meant what he said. Emma opened her mouth to protest, but the words got stuck in her throat. I don't know what to say," she stammered, the card still clutched in her hand. The man smiled softly, almost as if he expected the reaction. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just keep it, you never know when you might need help." The words lingered in the air like an invisible promise. He turned his attention back to the window, his coffee now long finished, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Something she wasn't prepared for. The evening passed in a haze. Emma went through the motions, serving the last few customers, clearing the tables, and settling the bills, but her mind was miles away. That card weighed heavily in her pocket, as if it had become part of her. When the diner finally emptied out and she could lock the door behind her, she didn't head straight home as she usually did. Instead, she stood on the steps of the diner for a moment, looking out at the empty street. The night air felt colder than usual, and her breath hung in the air like a cloud of confusion. She pulled the business card out of her pocket again, studying it under the flickering light of the diner's neon sign. It was plain, white, with only a name and a number printed on it. Carter Vance, she muttered aloud. Vance Enterprises. She had never heard of it, but that didn't matter. What mattered was what he had said, that he could help her if she ever needed it. But what kind of help did a rich businessman like Carter Vance offer to a struggling waitress like her? Could she even trust him? That night, as Emma lay awake in her small apartment, the card rested on the nightstand beside her bed. She couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Carter's quiet gaze, the kindness in his voice, haunted her. Her mind raced. She had always prided herself on being independent. She had never asked for handouts, never relied on anyone. But here was an opportunity, an offer of help that seemed too good to be true. The next morning, as the sun broke through the blinds, Emma knew she had a decision to make. The weight of her financial struggles was too much to bear alone. The rent was overdue, and her mother's medical bills were mounting with each passing day. Could she swallow her pride and take a chance? Was this really an opportunity or just another empty promise? Her heart pounded in her chest. She picked up the phone and stared at the number on the card. With a deep breath, Emma dialed the number. Her fingers shook slightly as she pressed the call button, as if her body knew she was about to cross a line she could never uncross. The phone rang twice before a calm, familiar voice answered. "Hello, this is Carter Vance." Emma hesitated, wondering if she had made a mistake. "Mr. Vance, this is Emma. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the waitress from the diner last night." There was a pause, and then a soft chuckle. "Of course, I remember you, Emma. I was wondering when you'd call." His voice was warm, but there was an edge to it that made her think he knew something she didn't. I don't really know why I called," she admitted, the words spilling out. "I guess I just didn't know what else to do. Things have been hard lately. I'm behind on rent, and my mom's medical bills are stacking up." She felt embarrassed, like she had just bared her soul to a stranger. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and then Carter spoke again, his voice steady. "I understand, I can help with that," he said simply. "But first, I need to meet you. There's something I want to discuss. How about lunch tomorrow? My office, 1 p.m. sharp." Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. She had expected him to offer help in some way, but this felt different. Why did he need to meet in person? But despite the unease in her chest, she agreed. "Okay, 1 p.m. tomorrow. I'll be there." The call ended, and Emma sat still for a moment, letting the weight of what had just happened sink in. She stared at the phone in her hand, her thoughts swirling. Was she really going to meet this man? Was this the opportunity she had been waiting for, or was she walking into a trap? She didn't know. All she knew was that for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. And hope, she thought, was all she had left. The next day came faster than Emma expected. She barely slept the night before, her mind racing with possibilities, doubts, and questions she couldn't answer. The weight of the decision she had made hung heavy on her chest. She had 1,000 reasons to walk away, to ignore the business card, to forget the whole thing. But something pulled her forward, an undeniable need for change. By the time she arrived at the towering glass building that housed Vance Enterprises, Emma felt small, like an imposter in a world she didn't belong to. The building loomed over her, its sleek modern design a stark contrast to the small diner she had worked in for years. She stood in the lobby for a moment, scanning the space around her. It was all marble floors, polished wood, and high ceilings, nothing like her life at all. She glanced down at the address on the business card again and followed the signs to the elevator. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart thudded in her chest. She could already feel the tension building. The elevator doors opened to a floor that was just as impressive as the lobby, if not more. The space was immaculate, modern, minimalistic, and cold. She walked down the long hallway, each step echoing in the silence, until she reached the door marked, Carter Vance, CEO. Taking a deep breath, she knocked twice, her nerves rattling like a tambourine. "Come in," came the voice from inside. Emma stepped inside, and the first thing she noticed was how quiet it was. The walls of his office were lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a stunning view of the city. The room was furnished simply, with a large wooden desk in the center, polished to perfection. A few leather chairs were placed strategically around the space, but nothing felt out of place. Everything was meticulously organized, like a picture in a magazine. Behind the desk, Carter Vance sat, looking just as put together as she remembered. His suit was sharp, his tie knotted perfectly, and his posture was precise. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable. "Emma," he said, standing up to greet her. "I'm glad you came. Thank you for seeing me," Emma said, her voice trembling slightly as she walked toward him, unsure of what to expect. Carter gestured for her to sit, his eyes never leaving her. "I know this is probably a bit overwhelming, but I think you'll find that what I have to offer will be worth your time." She took a seat across from him, feeling even smaller in the chair now that she was in his domain. She wasn't sure if she should say something, but she had a feeling that Carter wasn't the type to let awkward silences linger for long. "You must be wondering why I asked you to come here," he began, his tone steady. "Let me get straight to the point." Emma nodded, her throat dry. I'm not sure what to expect, to be honest." Carter leaned forward, his hands folding together on the desk. "I've been watching you, Emma." Her heart skipped a beat at the unexpected words. "What do you mean?" He smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel comfortable. It was more calculated, almost like he had anticipated her every response. "I know your situation. The bills, the late-night shifts at the diner, your mother's health. You've been doing the best you can, but sometimes, best isn't enough." Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't told him any of this. How could he possibly know? Carter's gaze softened just a fraction. "I don't mean to make you uncomfortable. I simply pay attention, and what I've seen tells me that you have potential, Emma. Potential that isn't being utilized where you are right now." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Potential? I'm just a waitress, Mr. Vance. What kind of potential do I have?" He leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You see, that's where you're wrong. You think your potential is tied to your circumstances, your job, your bills, your mother's situation. But it's not. Your potential is far greater than the confines of that diner. And I can help you unlock it." Emma's heart raced as she tried to process what he was saying. Was he offering her a job? A loan? Or something else entirely? Carter continued, his voice steady but with an edge of something else. A challenge, perhaps. "I want to offer you something you won't get anywhere else. A chance to change your life. I can provide the resources, the connections, the guidance. All you have to do is trust me and accept my offer." She was silent for a long moment, the words hanging in the air. "What kind of offer are we talking about?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Carter's lips curled into a faint smile. "I want you to join my company. Not just as an employee, but as a partner. I'm offering you a stake in Vance Enterprises, a position that could change everything for you. You'll have everything you need, money, power, influence, but you'll also have to give something up. Your old life, the life you've known." Emma's breath caught in her chest. The idea of walking away from everything she had ever known was terrifying. But the thought of a new life, of escaping the crushing weight of debt, of uncertainty, was equally compelling. Carter watched her closely, letting the silence stretch between them. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Emma. You have to decide, will you stay stuck in the same life, working endless hours for barely enough, or will you take a chance and come with me? She felt the weight of his words, the gravity of the decision before her. She had always prided herself on doing things the hard way, on earning every penny through sweat and struggle. But now, as she sat in front of a man who seemed to hold the keys to everything she had ever wanted, Emma felt something shift inside her. Was she willing to trust him? Was she willing to gamble on herself? Emma sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the chair as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. Carter's offer hung in the air between them, a tempting promise of everything she had ever dreamed of but never thought possible. She could already see the life she could have, a life where she wasn't constantly battling just to stay afloat, a life where her mother's medical bills weren't her greatest worry. But something inside her held her back, a warning bell ringing in her head. How could she trust a man like him? How could she trust someone who knew so much about her life without her even saying a word? I don't know, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can just walk away from everything I've known. I've worked hard for what I have, even if it's not much. Carter's eyes softened, but there was an edge to his smile that made Emma uneasy. He leaned forward, his voice calm but insistent. You don't have to walk away from everything, Emma. What I'm offering isn't about erasing your past, it's about giving you the chance to build a future. A future where you're not defined by your circumstances. His words were smooth, almost hypnotic, and for a moment, Emma could feel herself being drawn in by the promise of something better. But a part of her, the part that had always fought for everything she had, refused to let go. I'm not just offering you money, Emma. I'm offering you power, control. You can shape your own destiny. No more struggling, no more living paycheck to paycheck. She swallowed hard, the reality of what he was saying sinking in. The thought of power, of control, felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. But if she accepted, if she took that first step into this new world, everything could change. Why me? She blurted out before she could stop herself. The question had been eating at her from the moment he had handed her that business card. Why would you pick me? There are hundreds of people more qualified, more experienced than I am. Carter's gaze darkened slightly, as if he had been waiting for this question. He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. You think I'm offering you a job, don't you? His voice was low, almost amused. This isn't about qualifications, Emma. It's about potential. You have something that most people don't, a fire inside you, a drive that goes beyond the surface. I see it in you. It's what I've been looking for. Emma's pulse quickened. She could feel the intensity of his words, the weight of his gaze pressing into her. But there was something unsettling about it, something that felt like she was being manipulated, like the pieces of a game were being carefully set in place, and she was the one being moved. But she couldn't deny the truth in his words. She had always felt that there was more to her life than serving food and cleaning tables. She had dreams, aspirations that had been buried under the weight of her daily struggles. Maybe this was the chance to finally step into something bigger. As if sensing her internal conflict, Carter leaned forward again, his voice soft but firm. Let's not pretend, Emma. You and I both know that the life you're living right now is a dead end. You're working yourself to the bone, getting nowhere, just scraping by. You've been dealt a bad hand, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can have everything you've ever wanted. You can stop being the person who struggles. You can be someone who matters. The last word echoed in her mind, reverberating through her chest. She had spent so long feeling invisible, unimportant. Was this the way out? Was this the answer she had been searching for? Her mind raced, torn between the fear of the unknown and the desperate need to escape the life that had kept her in a constant state of worry. But just as she was about to say something, Carter's next words stopped her cold. But there's a price, Emma. There's always a price. Her heart skipped a beat. What price? Carter's smile deepened, but it wasn't kind. It was knowing, as if he had already anticipated her question. You'll have to give up your independence. You'll be mine, Emma. Not in the way you think, but in the way that matters. You'll be under my influence. And that means following my lead, trusting my guidance, and working for something bigger than yourself. His eyes locked onto hers, unblinking. Are you willing to pay that price? Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment she had to decide whether she would walk away from everything she knew and take the chance. She could feel the tension in her body, the pull between her dreams and her fears. She wanted to believe that Carter's offer was the key to her freedom, the way out of her constant struggle. But there was something gnawing at her, A feeling that if she accepted, she might be walking into something darker than she could ever imagine. Her hands trembled as she gripped the armrests of the chair. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter's smile never wavered. "If you refuse, Emma, you'll go back to your life. The same life you've been living, struggling, wondering if things will ever get better. You'll always wonder what could have been. But you'll have your independence." He let the words hang in the air, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. The decision was in her hands. She could stay the way she was, scraping by, working tirelessly for little reward, or she could take a leap of faith into the unknown, into a world that promised wealth, influence, and a chance to leave her old life behind. But at what cost? Emma took a deep breath, her mind spinning with possibilities, doubts, and a growing sense of uncertainty. And then, finally, she spoke. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding. "I'll take the offer." Carter's eyes gleamed with approval, but Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the decision she had just made might not be as simple as it seemed. The words were out of her mouth before she could fully process them. "I'll take the offer." Emma could feel the weight of her decision pressing down on her chest, heavy and suffocating. Carter's smile widened, and for the first time since entering his office, she saw something that wasn't just calculated, it was triumphant. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. "Good," he said, his voice smooth, almost like a promise. "You've made the right choice, Emma." She nodded, but the uneasy feeling in her stomach only deepened. She had chosen the unknown, the chance to break free from her current life. But now that it was real, now that it was happening, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Now, let's get started," Carter continued. "I have people who will take care of the details. You'll be introduced to the right circles, and I'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed." Emma didn't know what to say. Her head was spinning with the magnitude of what she had just agreed to. There was a part of her that was excited, even thrilled, but another part, the cautious, skeptical part, felt like she had just stepped into something much bigger than herself. The next few days were a whirlwind. Emma received a call the very next morning from Carter's assistant, a woman named Olivia, who arranged for her to come to the office to sign a series of documents. The papers were thick, laden with legal jargon that made Emma's head spin. She didn't fully understand everything she was signing, but Olivia reassured her that it was all standard procedure. After the paperwork was done, Emma was handed a sleek, black card, the kind that only the wealthy and powerful seemed to carry. It wasn't just any credit card, she was told. It was a corporate card, one that would grant her access to a lifestyle she could never have imagined. Within days, she was introduced to a new world, one of luxury, power, and influence. She was invited to meetings, dinners, and events with people she never thought she'd even be in the same room with. At first, it felt like a dream come true. She was living in a world of opulence and excess, where money was no object and everything was at her fingertips. But the further she stepped into Carter's world, the more she realized something wasn't right. It started small at first. The long hours, the constant demands. Emma was expected to attend high-profile meetings, social events, and business gatherings. She was no longer just a waitress, she was now a part of Carter's empire, a face at his side, expected to support his every move. At first, it was thrilling. She met people who were important, people who could change the course of her life. But the more she spent time with them, the more she realized how controlling Carter was. He wanted her to be there, yes, but he also wanted her to be his. She wasn't just a partner in business, she was becoming a tool, a pawn in his game. Carter's control over her life began to extend beyond the boardroom. He would call her late at night, expecting her to drop everything and join him for dinner or a meeting. He started to dictate her actions, her choices. "You don't need to make decisions for yourself," he would tell her. "I'll take care of everything." And Emma began to wonder, was this really freedom? One evening, after another late dinner with Carter and some of his influential friends, Emma found herself alone in her penthouse apartment, staring at the sleek black card on the counter. She had everything she could possibly want: money, luxury, a future she had never dared to dream of. But at what cost? She thought back to the woman she had been before she met Carter. The independent, struggling waitress who had fought for every cent, every inch of her life. She had her flaws, but she was her own person. Now, she felt like a puppet, a beautiful, well-dressed puppet with strings that were being pulled by someone who had promised to change her life. The truth was sinking in, piece by piece. Carter didn't want to save her. He wanted to control her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had traded one kind of struggle for another, a struggle that was more insidious and less visible. The price of the luxury she now lived in wasn't just money, it was her very sense of self. A week later, Emma received a call from her mother's doctor. The news wasn't good, her mother's condition had worsened, and the doctor recommended a more aggressive treatment plan, one that would require even more money than before. Emma felt her stomach twist as she listened to the doctor's voice on the other end of the line. She was already drowning in bills, and now this. The moment the call ended, Emma felt a surge of frustration and helplessness wash over her. For all the power, wealth, and luxury she now had, she still couldn't help her mother. She still couldn't change the things that really mattered. But she couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything Carter had done for her. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. Or so she thought. Just as she was about to put the phone down, there was a knock at the door. When she opened it, Carter was standing there, his expression unreadable. "I heard about your mother," he said quietly, stepping into the apartment. "I can help with the medical bills. It's the least I can do." Emma froze. There was something in his tone, something that made her feel even more trapped. She hadn't asked for his help, but here he was, offering it like he had the power to fix everything. She nodded, a tight smile forming on her lips, but inside, she felt a knot tightening in her chest. This was it. This was the moment when she realized just how deep the control ran. As Carter walked out of the apartment, Emma stood there, her fingers gripping the doorframe. She thought about the life she had left behind, the one that wasn't perfect but was hers. She thought about the dreams she had sacrificed to get here, and she realized, with chilling clarity, that she wasn't free. She was more trapped than ever before. And Carter, for all his promises, wasn't the savior she had imagined. He wasn't the answer to her problems. He was the architect of her new prison. The days blurred together in a haze of luxury and pressure. Emma had everything she could ever want: expensive clothes, the best food, an apartment that looked like something out of a magazine. She was now part of a world where her every move was calculated, where every conversation was a negotiation. But the more she was surrounded by power, the more she realized it wasn't freedom, it was just another kind of cage. Carter's hold on her tightened with every passing day. He controlled everything: where she went, who she met, what she said. She was expected to be present for every meeting, every dinner, every event, all while pretending that she was in control. But inside, she felt hollow. One evening, as she sat alone in her penthouse, staring out at the sprawling city lights below, Emma came to a painful realization: she had lost herself. The woman who had worked hard to make ends meet, the woman who had fought for every ounce of dignity, was no longer the person standing in front of the mirror. She had become a shadow of herself, a puppet in Carter's game, and she didn't know how to escape. That night, Emma made a decision. She couldn't continue living like this. She couldn't continue being someone else's pawn in a game she didn't even want to play. She walked into Carter's office the next morning, her heart pounding in her chest. He was sitting behind his massive desk, looking as composed as ever, a cold smile on his face as she entered. "Emma," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. "You look like you've come to a conclusion." "I have," she said, her voice trembling with determination. "I'm leaving." Carter raised an eyebrow, his expression never faltering. "Leaving? You've been with me for months, and you think you can just walk away from everything I've given you?" Emma took a deep breath. "You never gave me anything. You took everything from me. My freedom, my choices, my life. You made me believe I had to be a part of this world to survive, but I don't need it. I don't need you." For the first time, Carter's expression shifted. There was something close to irritation in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "You can't just walk away, Emma. You have nothing without me. Nothing. I had everything before I met you," she said, standing taller now. "I may not have had money, but I had my dignity. I had my freedom, and that's something you can't buy." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Carter's eyes bore into her, but Emma didn't flinch. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back now. Finally, Carter sighed, his posture relaxing slightly. "So, you're truly going to walk away? After everything I've given you?" Emma nodded, her chest tight with emotion but firm in her resolve. "Yes, I'm done." As Emma left Carter's office for the last time, she felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear because she knew there would be consequences for her decision. Relief because she was finally taking control of her own life again. She walked out of the building, the weight on her shoulders lifting with each step. The world outside was unfamiliar, but it felt like freedom, true freedom. The kind that came with making her own choices, no matter how hard they might be. She didn't need Carter. She didn't need his power, his influence, or his money. For the first time in months, she smiled, a real smile. She had her life back. Emma's phone buzzed as she stepped onto the busy street. It was a message from her mother's doctor. Her mother's condition was stabilizing, and the treatment plan had begun to work. The weight of the world hadn't lifted, but Emma felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but she was free to fight her battles on her own terms. As she walked away from the life Carter had created for her, Emma realized that freedom wasn't just about money or power. It was about choice, independence, and the courage to walk away when you knew you were worth more than the life that was handed to you. And for the first time, she truly believed she was worthy of a life of her own.